Shabbats, feast days, the new moons, and his diet and all the clean foods are all pointing toward things still to come. And so he talks about this. Let no man judge you in regards to new moons and to Shabbats and to feast days and to eating clean, because these are all pointing toward things still to come. And remember, he wrote this book to the Colossians, a good 30, 40, 50 years after the events of the resurrection. So, showing how these feast days, the Shabbats, eating clean foods, all these things still have relevance to our lives because they all point toward things to come. In 1st and 2nd Thessalonians, he is our soon coming king. He's our soon coming king. And of course, both of these letters contain a lot of reference to the end times, to when the Antichrist comes and defiles the temple, and to when Yahshua returns with the brightness of his coming and destroys the wicked one. So he is our soon coming king, written to the Thessalonians who at that time were going through quite a bit of persecution, so Paul was trying to encourage them. In the books of 1st and 2nd Timothy, he is our great mediator. Of course, we read about in these books how he is the sole mediator between us and the Father, and that he is our great mediator. He is the one who prays for us and stands in the gap for us. In Titus, he shows us that grace equals the power to obey his Torah. And in Titus chapter 2, grace is actually defined, because grace says it teaches us to live righteously, to cast away all unrighteousness, and to obey according to his word. And so we see that grace is that power to obey his word. And that's why he gives us grace. Which again, grace, the whole concept of grace is often misunderstood in the Christian world. But but grace is actually defined right there in the book of Titus. In the book of Philemon, or however you pronounce that. Philemon. In Philemon, he is our friend who sticks closer than a brother. And if you remember the book of Philemon, Paul is writing to have that slave set free. Because he was such a close friend, such a good friend of Paul, and helped Paul when he was sick. And so he pleads with Philemon to release his slave, and just really highlights the quality of how close a friend that Paul found this man to be. And so I think that just shows how good a friend that Yahshua is to us. Okay, then we come to Hebrews. And Hebrews is kind of an easy one. He is Hebrew, yeah. He is the blood of the everlasting covenant. Of course, all through Hebrews, it talks about that first tabernacle, and it talks about the importance of the blood, of the shedding of blood. Without shedding of blood, there can be no remission of sins. And then it ties that into Yahshua shed blood and what he did, and ties that into the everlasting covenant that we're under. So Hebrews is all about how he shed that blood for us to bring us into covenant with him. In the book of James, he is the one who resists the proud and exalts the humble. And that's a theme all through that book. A book really that teaches us how to be humble, teaches us how to put a bridle on our tongues, how to think before we speak, how to live not trying to plan out our own lives, but to rely on him And so the theme there is resisting the proud, exalting the humble, which is actually a direct quote from the book of James. In 1st and 2nd Peter, he is the disappointer of the scoffer and the vindicator of the faithful. So if you remember, Peter talks about in these 2 books, he talks about how people are scoffing because they're saying, look, everything has continued since our fathers and since everything's just the same. He's never going to come. And Peter then says, but they are ignorant of the fact that at one point, way in the past, he covered the earth with floodwaters, and now he's going to come back and cover the earth with fire. So he's the disappointer of the scoffer and the vindicator of the faithful. In 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John, he teaches us to live without sin, to burn with a love so brightly we dare not sin. And that comes directly from 1 John 3, 6 through 11, which talks about how through him and by keeping our eyes on him and being dependent on him, we can actually live without sin. We can actually overcome sin and live a holy, pure life only through him. Of course, if we should happen to sin, God forbid, but if we should happen to sin, we have him as our mediator. But really, John is dealing with a Gnostic set that was teaching that your spirit man was in heaven, and so your flesh could sin all it wanted. And so John, to combat that Gnosticism that was starting to pervade the early church, he said, no, that's not what the Messiah says. He wants us to live holy here and now. He wants us to resist sin here and now, and we can do that if we stay dependent on him. And so that whole theme is encouraging us that we can live without sin. Of course, we can only do it through him. And then finally, not finally. We got Jude and then Revelation. So the book of Jude, he is the king coming. He is the king coming with 10,000s of his saints to destroy the wicked. So in Jude we read about that prophecy that is attributed to Enoch, which talks about his second coming. It talks about what we will read about in Revelation 19, how he will return with his resurrected saints and with his army of angels to destroy the wicked and to take rulership over the earth. And then finally we come to the book of Revelation. In Revelation, he is the first and the last. The Aleph and the Tov. And the King of Kings. All about his second coming, his rule on earth for 1,000 years, and of course the new heavens and new earth. So, obviously there's probably other themes and aspects that you can get out of every book. This was just my version of it. But I think you can see how every single book in the Bible, all 66 books, they all point toward Messiah and they all point toward Torah. And they're all in some way either showing us an aspect of who he is or showing us an aspect of how we can obey Torah or how it relates to Torah or to the Messiah. So that's it.
Thank you.